The village rested in the cradle of the land, surrounded by ancient baobab trees, whose roots reached deep into the earth, whispered to carry the secrets of the ancestors. Rivers wound like silver veins through the forest, their gentle murmur said to be the voices of the departed, guiding the living with unseen hands. Children's laughter rang out in the open air, their bare feet stirring up red dust as they chased after one another with boundless energy. Under the shade of the largest baobab, elders sat in a semicircle, their wizened faces glowing with the warmth of the afternoon sun, as they spun tales of heroes and tricksters to an eager audience. The villagers bustled with quiet anticipation, and for this was no ordinary day. Today, the earth and sky seemed to hum with excitement. The scent of freshly pounded yam and spice stew filled the air as women stirred pots, their rhythmic movements as practiced as the songs they hummed. Drummers tuned their instruments, fingers itching to call the people to celebration. Beneath the hum of preparation, there was an unspoken reverence, a feeling that the ancestors themselves were watching. Abeni stood at the window of her grandmother's hut, her fingers lightly brushing the carved wooden frame. She was radiant, her skin glowing like polished mahogany in the soft light of the morning. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the intricate beads in her hair, each one clinking softly, a song of her lineage. Her grandmother, bent with age but sharp of mind, moved behind her, fastening the final strand of coral beads around Abeni's neck. "Child," the grandmother said, her voice heavy with wisdom, "you carry both beauty and burden. Never forget, the eyes of the village see much, but the eyes of the ancestors see all." Abeni nodded, her gaze distant. She had always felt the weight of the village's expectations, whispered reminders of her parents' tragic passing when she was a child. Some said they were taken too soon because of their goodness, while others murmured of curses and debts unpaid. Either way, Abeni was seen as both a blessing and a warning. Today, she was not just a bride, but a bridge between the past and the future. Babatunde stood in the shade of the yam field, his calloused hands brushing the leaves as he inspected his crops one last time before the wedding. He was a man of the soil, grounded and steady, his strength drawn from the earth he cultivated. His friends surrounded him, teasing him about the life ahead. "You will have no time for the farm now," one joked, slapping him on the back. "A wife like Abeni will have your head in the clouds." Babatunde chuckled, but said nothing. His mind focused on the significance of the day. His union with Abeni was more than personal. It was a merging of two respected families, a bond that symbolized the prosperity of the entire village. As he straightened, his gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the baobabs stood like silent guardians. "This is a good day," he murmured, his voice low but steady. "The ancestors are pleased." Yejide and Omatola stood apart from the crowd, their faces carefully composed into polite smiles, as they watched Abeni being fussed over by the village women. Inside, however, their hearts simmered with envy. "Look at her," Yejide whispered, her tone sharp. "Everyone acts as if she's the only one who's ever been married, as if she's the only one who matters." Omatola nodded, her jaw tight. "They don't see it, do they? How she plays the part of the perfect daughter, the perfect bride, always smiling, always humble." She spat the word like venom. Yejide's eyes narrowed as she watched Abeni laugh softly at something her grandmother said. Perhaps it's time someone reminded her that perfection is an illusion. The two exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. Whatever they were planning, it was rooted in the bitterness they had nurtured for years. The sun dipped low, casting golden hues over the village as the celebration began. Drums thundered to life, their rhythm pulling the villagers into a dance that seemed to echo through the ages. Men and women, young and old, moved in unison, their feet pounding the earth in gratitude and joy. Abeni entered the circle, her presence drawing a collective gasp. She wore a flowing wrapper of deep red and gold, the colors of love and prosperity, and her steps were light but deliberate, as though she carried the blessings of the ancestors. With every movement, Babatunde followed, his strong frame clad in white, a symbol of purity and honor. Chief Adisa, the village elder, stood at the center, his staff planted firmly in the ground. He raised a hand, and the crowd fell silent. His gaze swept over the gathering, lingering on Yejide and Omatola for a moment longer than necessary. "The spirits walk among us tonight," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "May they bless this union and watch over our village." As the festivities continued, Yajide and Omatola approached Abeni with a gift. It was a box adorned with gold beads and intricate carvings, gleaming under the firelight. "We wanted to give you something special," Yejide said, her smile sweet but her eyes cold. Omatola nodded, her hands resting lightly on the box. Token of our love and best wishes for your happiness." Abeni, ever gracious, accepted the gift with a radiant smile. "Thank you, your kindness humbles me." But as she held the box, a chill ran down her spine, and for the briefest moment, her smile faltered. Chief Adisa's gaze darkened as he watched from afar. He approached Abeni, his expression grave. "Be mindful, child," he said softly. "Gifts carry the heart of the giver. Not all hearts are pure." Abeni looked at him, startled. But before she could respond, the drums picked up again, and the elder disappeared into the crowd. That night, as the village quieted and the fires burned low, Abeni sat by the window of her new home. The gift sat on the table, untouched, its golden surface gleaming faintly in the moonlight. Outside, the wind stirred, carrying with it a strange, whispering sound. Abeni leaned closer to the window, her brow furrowing. It was faint at first, but as she listened, the whispers grew clearer. Her name carried on the breeze. "Abeni, Abeni." Her heart raced as she stepped back, the shadows in the room seeming to shift and twist. The golden gift caught her eye. Again, and for the first time, she felt a deep unease settle in her chest as the wind outside howled. Abeni whispered a quiet prayer, clutching the beads around her neck. Somewhere, deep in the forest, the spirits stirred. The evening was quiet, the light of the setting sun spilling into the small hut Abeni now shared with Babatunde. The intricately adorned gift box sat on a low table, glimmering faintly, as if it held a secret it was eager to reveal. Abeni knelt before it, her fingers brushing lightly over the gold beads and carvings. She hesitated for a moment, a faint unease stirring within her, but her gracious nature overruled her doubt. With steady hands, she untied the ornate ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled among folds of fine cloth, was a wooden doll. It was delicately carved, with features that bore a striking resemblance to Abeni herself, yet something about it was wrong. The doll's eyes were hollow, empty pits that seemed to watch her, and its chest bore a deep crack, as though its heart had been broken. Abeni frowned, but quickly shook her head. "Surely this must be symbolic," she whispered, placing the doll carefully on a shelf near the hearth. "A gift meant to bring blessings, no doubt." She tried to reassure herself, but as she turned away, the flame in the hearth flickered violently, casting long shadows across the walls. She paused, glancing back at the doll. For a fleeting moment, she thought she saw its head tilt, ever so slightly. The days that followed brought a heaviness into Abeni and Babatunde's lives. Their once thriving crops began to wither, their green leaves turning brown under the same sun that had nurtured them for years. The livestock grew restless, many falling ill without explanation. Tools that had served faithfully for generations broke in Babatunde's hands, leaving him frustrated and weary. In the village, whispers began to spread. Perhaps the ancestors are displeased, some said. Did Abeni bring misfortune with her into her husband's home? Others avoided their hut entirely, casting wary glances as they passed. At night, Abeni found no peace. Her dreams were filled with the faces of her ancestors, their expressions grim and sorrowful. They spoke in voices that seemed to echo from deep within the earth. Beware the gift you hold close, they warned. Betrayal walks in the shadows, and malice follows you. Each morning, Abeni woke with a start, her heart racing and her body drenched in sweat. One night, as Abeni sat by the dim light of a flickering oil lamp, Babatunde entered the room. His shoulders slumped with the weight of their struggles. He dropped a broken hoe onto the floor and sighed heavily. Is this the life we are destined for now? He said, his voice low but edged with frustration. Everything falls apart in my hands. The land turns against us. The animals grow sick, and the village whispers of curses. Abeni's chest tightened. You think the ancestors are angry with us? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Babatunde glanced at her, his expression unreadable. Perhaps they are, or perhaps. He hesitated, then continued. Perhaps it is something you brought with you, something from your past. His words struck her like a blow. Abeni looked away, tears pricking her eyes. I would never bring harm to this home, she said softly. But even as she spoke, doubt began to creep into her own heart. Desperate for answers, Abeni sought out her grandmother, whose wisdom had guided her since childhood. She found the old woman seated outside her hut, weaving a basket with hands as steady as the roots of the baobab. Grandmother, Abeni began, her voice trembling. Strange things have been happening since my wedding. The crops, the animals, the whispers in the wind. And my dreams, they haunt me. The grandmother set down her basket and studied Abeni with eyes that seemed to pierce through layers of time. Tell me everything, child, she said, her tone calm but firm. Abeni recounted the events in detail, including the strange gift she had received. When she described the hollow-eyed doll, her grandmother's expression darkened. This is no blessing, the old woman said gravely. This is a curse. Someone close to you, someone who envies you, has poisoned your happiness. Abeni's breath caught in her throat. But who would do such a thing? There is only one way to know, her grandmother replied. We must consult Chief Adisa. He will call upon the ancestors to reveal the truth. The next day, Abeni and her grandmother visited the chief, who listened intently as they explained their plight. Chief Adisa's face grew stern as he took, in their words, "Bring the doll," he instructed. "The ancestors will speak through it." Under the shade of the great baobab tree, Chief Adisa performed the sacred divination. He placed the doll on a mat before him and chanted in a deep, resonant voice, calling upon the spirits to reveal the source of the curse. The air around them grew heavy, and a sudden gust of wind sent leaves swirling. The chief's voice fell silent as he stared at the doll. After a long pause, he looked up at Abeni, his eyes filled with sorrow. The doll is a vessel of malice, created by hands that should have held you with love. It carries the envy of your cousins, Yejide and Omotola, who wished to see your joy turn to sorrow. Abeni staggered back, her hands covering her mouth. "No," she whispered. "They are my family. They couldn't." Envy can turn even the closest of kin into strangers, Chief Adisa said. But be warned, child. This curse is powerful. Breaking it will require more than sorrow or anger. It will require strength, courage, and forgiveness. Abeni's world felt as though it had shattered. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound she could imagine. But she knew she could not let the curse destroy her marriage or her life. With trembling hands, she took the doll and walked toward her cousin's hut, determined to confront them. Yejide and Omatola were sitting outside, their laughter dying as they saw Abeni approach. "Ah, our dear bride," Yejide said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "What brings you here?" Abeni held up the doll, her voice shaking with anger and pain. "Why?" she demanded. "Why would you do this to me? To my family?" Omatola's face hardened. "What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind?" "You cursed me," Abeni cried. "You wanted to see me suffer. Why? What did I ever do to deserve this?" Yejide scoffed, crossing her arms. "You think too highly of yourself, Abeni. You've always been the perfect one, haven't you? Maybe you deserve a little taste of what it feels like to be overlooked." The words stung, but before Abeni could respond, Omatola added, "Go, ahead, run to the elders with your superstitions. See who believes you." Word of the confrontation spread quickly, and soon the village began to whisper again, this time accusing Abeni of being marked by the ancestors. Even Babatunde grew distant, his faith in her wavering. Abeni realized that if she wanted to break the curse, she would have to seek help beyond the village. She would have to face the unknown. Abeni stood at the edge of the sacred grove, her breath catching in her throat. Before her lay the oracle's sanctuary, an otherworldly space carved from stone and wood. Symbols, glowing faintly like embers, adorned every surface, and carvings of ancestral faces seemed to watch her, their eyes alive with wisdom. The air felt heavy, charged with a presence that made her knees weak. The oracle emerged from the shadows, draped in a flowing robe of deep indigo, adorned with shells and beads that clinked softly as they moved. Their face was ageless, neither old nor young, with eyes that seemed to pierce through Abeni's very soul. "You have come far, child of the baobab," the oracle said, their voice a deep resonant hum. "What you carry is heavier than you." "No," Abeni knelt, bowing her head. "Great oracle, I seek to break the curse that has plagued my home and restore peace to my family." The oracle raised a hand, motioning for her to rise. "The curse you bear was planted in envy, but its roots are deeper still. The pain of betrayal does not begin with your cousins. It reaches back to the sorrow of your parents' deaths. Their spirits linger, bound by injustice and unresolved pain." Tears filled Abeni's eyes. "What must I do to free them?" "To free myself," the oracle gestured toward the symbols glowing on the walls. "Forgiveness, child. True forgiveness. Not just spoken words, but the surrender of your anger and pain. Only then will the spirits hear you. Only then will the baobab's roots accept your offering." Abeni swallowed hard. The weight of the task pressed on her chest. "Forgiveness. After what they've done to me." The oracle stepped closer, their voice softer but firm. "Forgiveness does not free them. It frees you. But be warned, the heart that forgives must be true, or the spirits will turn away and the curse will remain." Abeni nodded, though her heart trembled. She knew there was no other path. Returning to the village, Abeni felt her courage waver. The sacred baobab tree loomed in the distance. Its massive branches stretched skyward like arms in prayer. The villagers gathered beneath it, their murmurs filling the air. Chief Adisa stood at the base of the tree, his staff planted firmly in the earth. As Abeni approached, the chief raised his hand, calling for silence. Today, we gather not for judgment, but for truth. The ancestors watch us from the roots to the heavens. Let them guide us now. Abeni stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. I call upon Yejide and Omotola. Her cousins emerged from the crowd, their expressions guarded. Yejide sneered. What now, Abeni? More accusations. Have you not embarrassed us enough? Abeni took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. You cursed me. You brought this suffering to my home, to my family. I have come to confront you, not with anger, but with truth. Omotola crossed her arms, her voice sharp. You speak of truth, yet all you have are your baseless superstitions. Where is your proof? Chief Adisa stepped forward, holding the cursed doll. This is your proof. The ancestors have spoken. Through the divination, they revealed your hands in crafting this curse, born from envy and malice. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Yejide's defiance faltered, her eyes darting to Omotola, whose face had gone pale. Abeni's voice broke as tears streamed down her face. Why? Why would you do this to me? To our family? Yejide looked away, shame creeping into her features. You wouldn't understand, she muttered. Omotola's voice cracked. It was never meant to go this far. We only wanted to, see you brought down, just a little. You always had everything. Why couldn't we have something too? The crowd murmured in shock and disapproval. Abeni's hands trembled as she clutched the doll. I may never understand your reasons, but I will not let them poison my heart. I forgive you, not for your sake, but for mine and for our ancestors. She spoke the words. The air grew heavy, and a low hum resonated from the baobab tree. The wind began to stir, rustling the branches above. The wind became a gale, and the hum grew into a roar. The baobab tree's branches swayed violently, as though the spirits themselves were moving through it. The cursed doll, placed at the tree's base, began to smolder, its edges curling with flames that burned without smoke. Abeni stepped back as the fire consumed the doll, reducing it to ash. The wind howled, carrying the ashes upward until they disappeared into the sky. The villagers cried out as the ground beneath the baobab trembled. Yejide and Omotola collapsed to their knees, sobbing uncontrollably. We're sorry, Yejide cried. We didn't mean for this to happen. The storm subsided as quickly as it had begun, leaving the air still and charged with an unspoken reverence. Chief Adisa raised his voice, solemn and steady. The ancestors have spoken. They have burned away the curse, but their message is clear. Let envy and dishonor fester no more, or the roots of this tree will wither, and with it, the soul of this village. The villagers bowed their heads, murmuring prayers of repentance and unity. Abeni, though drained, felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. The weight that had burdened her heart lifted, leaving her free to move forward. She turned to Yejide and Omotola, their faces streaked with tears. I hope you find peace, she said softly, for all our sakes. As she walked away from the tree, the first rays of dawn broke through the canopy, bathing the village in golden light. The morning sun rose slowly over the village, its light spreading like a soft blanket across the land. The storm that had shaken the earth the previous night was gone, leaving behind a profound stillness. It was as if the spirits themselves had blessed the air, washing it clean of all malice. The sacred baobab tree stood tall and unmoving, its leaves glistening with dew that sparkled like tiny beads. Inside their home, Abeni and Babatunde sat in silence, the weight of the past days still heavy between them. Babatunde reached for Abeni's hand, his touch hesitant but warm. "I doubted you," he said, his voice low but steady. "When the whispers grew loud and the land turned against us, I let my fear blind me. I questioned your heart when I should have trusted it." Abeni looked at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "The curse did not only test our home, it tested our bond, but we endured Babatunde. And now we are stronger for it." He nodded, squeezing her hand. "I will honor what we have learned, Abeni. I will honor you. Together we will build a life that even the ancestors will look upon with pride." For the first time in weeks, Abeni smiled, a small but genuine smile that spoke of healing and hope. Later that day, as the village stirred, Yejide and Omatola approached the couple. Their steps were slow, their faces heavy with shame. The villagers looked on from afar, their curiosity mingled with judgment. When they reached Abeni and Babatunde, Yejide spoke first, her voice trembling. We have wronged you. There is no excuse for what we did, no way to undo the pain we caused." Omatola lowered her head, unable to meet Abeni's gaze. "We let envy twist our hearts. We betrayed the bond of family, and for that we are deeply sorry." Abeni studied them for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she closed her eyes, recalling the oracle's words. "Forgiveness does not free them. It frees you. I forgive you," Abeni said softly, her voice carrying both pain and grace. "Not because what you did was right, but because I refuse to carry the weight of your actions in my heart. Transform your envy into gratitude, your malice into humility. Only then can you find peace." Yejid and Omatola fell to their knees, their tears soaking the earth beneath them. "Thank you," they whispered, their voices barely audible. Their journey toward redemption began that day. At Chief Adisa's suggestion, they stood before the village, confessing their actions and asking for forgiveness. Though some villagers still eyed them with suspicion, the act of accountability planted the first seeds of trust. Under the shade of the sacred baobab tree, Chief Adisa called a gathering of the elders and the villagers. His staff struck the ground as he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of generations. "This tree has stood for longer than any of us can remember," he began. "Its roots run deep, connecting us to the ancestors, while its branches stretch toward the future. Let us remember its lesson. What we nurture in the roots will grow in the branches. If we feed the roots with envy and dishonor, the tree will wither. But if we feed them with honesty, unity, and forgiveness, the tree will flourish, and so will we." The elders shared stories of past conflicts, resolved by the ancestors' wisdom. One spoke of a feud between families that nearly tore the village, apart only to be mended through a single act of grace. Another recalled how a farmer's jealousy nearly cursed the harvest, until his repentance restored balance. The villagers reflected on their own roles in the recent events, the whispers they had spread, the judgments they had passed. One by one, they vowed to uphold stronger bonds of trust, to protect their community from the poison of envy and division. Abeni, guided by Chief Adisa and her grandmother, prepared to plant a young baobab tree near her home. The sapling was small, but strong, its roots wrapped in moist earth. As the villagers gathered around her, she knelt to dig the hole. Her hands worked with care, each movement deliberate and reverent. When the sapling was placed into the ground, she covered its roots with soil, patting it down gently. "This tree," Abeni said, her voice steady, despite the emotion that threatened to overwhelm her, "is not just for me, it is for all of us. Its roots will grow deep, reminding us of resilience. Its branches will stretch wide, reminding us of our connection to one another. And its leaves will whisper of forgiveness, For that is the greatest strength of all. The villagers stepped forward, one by one, pouring water onto the soil or laying small offerings at the base of the tree, cowrie shells, pieces of cloth, and beads, each a token of unity and hope. Prayers filled the air, weaving together a promise of harmony. Years later, the story of Abeni and the cursed wedding gift lived on, passed down from elders to children around evening fires. It was told with vivid detail, the storm that had shaken the village, the flames that consumed the doll, and the forgiveness that had healed the broken bonds of families. The young baobab tree grew tall, its branches casting a wide protective shade over Abeni's home. It became a place where villagers gathered for counsel, its roots a reminder of the lessons they had learned. Envy blinds the heart, the elders would say, their voices rich with the rhythm of tradition. But forgiveness heals the soul, and so the tale became a guiding lesson for generations, a testament to the dangers of malice and the transformative power of grace. In time, it was said that the baobab tree itself would whisper the story, its leaves rustling softly in the wind, ensuring that Abeni's courage and wisdom would never be forgotten.